Hey everybody, I am Mugsy,
Hello, I'm Romeo. Almost said Ron, but I'm Romeo.
and this is the Mugsy and Romeo Show.
I'm not you, you're not me, but we're in this thing together. No one's perfect, wait and see. Really, 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 really want to hope to change hearts and minds. Oh, yes, I do. Oh. Wait a second. That's enough. Mugsy and Romeo Show.
It's been a while since we've talked.
Yeah, it's been a long. I guess we could tell you guys what happened. We actually recorded this segment before, and some genius, I'm not going to mention any names, messed up the audio, so we didn't have any audio. So today we did it smart. We've got some redundancy going on, so when I mess it up, there's another option. So here we are, Mugsy and Romeo, ready to talk about today's topic.
So, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about racism, and we're going to kind of approach this thing from two different angles. The first thing is going to be, what's the definition? Because I think a lot of times we get lost because people don't know what racism is. And then the second part will be, is there a way to fix it, and if so, how? So we'll start with, what's your definition of racism?
Yeah, so I appreciate the fact that you started with small topics and then we'll work our way to the heavier, meatier stuff.
Yeah.
But no, great topic, man, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. The last 18, 24 months have been pretty rough around the issue of race. But so to get started, my definition, and of course this is just Mugsy's definition of racism, would be when you believe that your race is superior to another race for the simple fact that you belong to that race.
Okay, good answer. So my definition is similar to that, but it has one more element to it. So my definition is the power, basically, to move other people's stuff. So nobody cares if you hate Ron. Nobody cares if you hate Ron because he's black. I only care if you hate Ron and then some kind of power structure comes to enforce that hate. So you can live right next door to me your whole life. Hate me all you want. But when you call the police and they show up and immediately start to enforce your hatred, that's racism. That other stuff to me is just prejudice. You don't like Ron because he's black, good for you.
That's great. And just a reminder to everybody, we are two totally different dudes coming from totally different backgrounds, totally different upbringings, thought processes, and that kind of thing. So we just love the idea of, just talking, getting to know each other and hearing each other's perspective and seeing if we can grow and be better. And it's interesting to me that you separated it out from kind of the personal level to the structural or larger level, because, growing up in a small town in Iowa where everybody looked like me, I always thought of racism as individual. You're a racist or you're not a racist. You fall into one of those two categories.
Right.
That's the way I grew up. But as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, I've come to realize that, yeah, that's true, but there's also a lot of shades of gray, and some of that comes with the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Honestly, Ron, I never even thought about structural racism until the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And I've thought about structural racism pretty much my whole life because I've literally experienced it. You know what I'm saying? So I could see where a guy from your background could look and be like, oh, it's just black people being hyperbolic. It's just, oh, they're always complaining. They're always playing the race card. First of all, let me address the race card real quick. If there is a card that we could play that would make it beneficial to be black, I've never seen it. Because every time we bring up race, somebody goes, oh, there they go, bringing up race again. I'm like, well, I didn't invent race. I didn't create it. You know what I'm saying? So it was here long before me or my mom and my dad or their mom and their dad got here. Race was a thing. So to now make it my burden is kind of weird. But anyway, but no, I think if we really look at things and just kind of, like I said, look at your perspective and say, okay, this guy didn't grow up like I did. He probably hasn't been stopped by the cops 7 times for no reason. He probably hasn't been followed around the grocery store and then kicked out. What I like about this is that it's, hey, although my experience is different, let me understand what it is that you may have gone through.
Yeah.
Let me look at it and then say, okay, this is valid. This is something I might challenge. And it's okay to challenge ideas. But where we run into trouble is we take those ideas and we make them the rule for the whole.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I want to circle back to something that we were talking about a little bit ago, and that has to do with, you know, how you separated out from individual to, you know, the broader scope. Because I think, you know, growing up, I felt like I was pretty enlightened, you know. Went from a small town to college with a lot more people, got to know people, and thought I was pretty open-minded. I had some black friends. And so, you know, I'm telling myself, and, you know, how often do we hear people say this? Oh, you know, I've got black friends. I'm not a racist. And that is, I think that was me in my limited understanding at that point, based on my experience, categorizing it as black and white, you know. Because I have a black friend, I like Ron, he's my buddy, I'll hang out with him, then I must not have any racist issues in my own heart, my own life. That's thing number one that I'm thinking. But once I began to understand that it's not just either or, it can be a little bit of a combo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that the reason that you and I are able to have these discussions is because we know each other.
Yeah.
We are friends. I know your family. I know your little buddy Milo. I've met Milo. You know my family, and we've broken bread together. We've spent some time together. So I know where your heart is. You have a pretty good idea of where my heart is.
Right.
And so it's at that point that we can have these discussions. And I feel like you have permission in my life because you know me, not to call me out, because then I get defensive,
Right.
but to call me up. You know, and if I see an attitude in your life, then I'm not afraid to say, hey, Ron, you're better than that.
Yeah.
And I think in addition to that, and then I'm almost done,
Okay,
you got
then
two
take your
talkers
time.
here, right? Hopefully we'll get something accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
But in addition to that, I think just conversations are important. If you try to call somebody up and you don't have a relationship with them, and it's a touchy subject like this, then you might be doing more harm than good, to be honest with you. Because when I become defensive, when I feel like you're personally attacking me, and I would assume it's the same for you.
Right.
If I feel like you're personally attacking me, I get defensive. And I'm not listening. I'm not thinking, is this an area that I need to rethink? I'm thinking, how do I defend myself? Because I'm not a bad person.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
So I think building relationships are huge. And more importantly than that, building relationships with people who are different than you is huge.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done for now.
That might have been the segue to the next part.
Oh.
So that was one, is there a solution to racism? And if so, what do you believe that it is? I'll let you go first, man, because I got a lot.
Man, I hope there's a solution, because it's getting pretty ugly. And honestly, I think the way, at least in the United States, we are becoming so polarized. Man, I worry about my kids and my future grandkids and the world they're going to live in.
Right.
So I hope there's a solution. I believe there is. I'm basically an optimist. I consider myself a realistic optimist. So I know there's a lot of work to be done. But I think there's a solution, and I'm going to say two things, and then I'll pass it over to you.
on.
I'll pass the conch shell to you. Number one, my personal opinion, and this is just me, my personal opinion is there is no true healing without Jesus being involved. And that's just me. I have a strong faith, and I believe that nothing is made completely right until he returns and he heals everybody. And he'll bring an end to racism. But in the meantime, how do we work? How do we act? How do we treat each other who are different and think different? And that's important. And I think that it all goes back to relationships, being willing to get to know people who are different and have conversations.
Yeah. Okay.
The conch shell is yours.
Thank you. Buckle up.
Come on.
So
I might jump in with questions.
Come on, just in whenever
As
you
you
feel.
go.
So, I believe in order for anything to change, there has to be a few elements to come into play. One, you have to believe that there's something wrong. Two, you have to agree that it needs to change. And three, you have to agree on how to change it. So there's a lot of agreement in there. Agree something's wrong, agree that it needs to change, and then agree on how to change it. So with racism, I think it's difficult systematically, only because normally the most angry people, at least right now, the most angry people get the microphone. You know, and that's what we have right now. We have all the polarized people talking real loud. And remember how I talked about most of us that are in the middle? We're like real quiet because we don't want to. We're trying to not be looked at as one of those, oh, well, I'm not racist.
Right.
I'm not this guy. We don't want to be looked at that way. So we normally will stay in the middle and we'll just not cause too many waves. But what has to happen is the middle section, which is the big section, has to become louder than the outliers. And when Ron sees somebody of his, you know, persuasion or somebody that he's accepted into his tribe acting up, Ron has to check him. Ron has to be like, hey, man, that's inappropriate. You don't know that guy. Why are you saying that? Why are you doing that? And vice versa. When Jeff or Mugsy sees somebody of his persuasion that's out of line, you know, what does the Bible say? Iron sharpens iron, man.
Yep.
So if I'm not challenging my brothers, whether it be brothers who look like me or brothers who don't look like me, if I'm not challenging you, nothing's going to change.
And can I jump in real quick?
on.
I think that's important. It's something that I kind of left out of my comments, but I think it's very important, and that is the desire to act. You know, it's not just good enough for me to address any issues that I have towards race internally. You know, for years, I've done that. And for years, Joe Blow can do that. But we're not going to change the bigger picture if we're not willing to act. And that's exactly what you're saying, being able to call up or challenge or hold accountable people around us. And so I'm committing that I'm going to do better at that in my sphere of influence. And that's another thing. And then I'll pass it back to you. The other thing is, you know, it's easy to get overwhelmed because the problem is so huge. It's huge. Romeo can't fix it. Mugsy can't fix it. So it's easy to say, well, you know, I'll just take care of myself, make sure that I deal with my own attitudes and not challenge other people. But, you know, it's like the story of the little boy on the beach. The little boy walking down the beach. The beach was full of seashells. An old man was watching him, watching the little boy walk down the beach. Every now and then the little boy would stop, pick up a seashell and throw it into the ocean, walk a little farther, repeat the process, and the old man just watched him, thousands of seashells on the beach. And he said, son, you're never going to make a difference. And the little boy picked up another seashell, threw it in the ocean, and said, I did for that one.
That's good.
And so I think when you look at it like that, it helps not be overwhelmed as much.
Yeah. And I think because we're in this microwave kind of society, you know, you and I, we want to see it right now. We're not going to see it. You and me will be long gone. So the best thing that we can do is teach our children, you know, teach kids that come into contact with us to be inclusive and say, hey man, this kid is kids normally don't have a problem until they get older and start acting like their parents. Right. Like children, you could put children of every race in a room and nobody will have a problem with nobody. They'll just play and get along. you know, until somebody tries to steal a toy. Then they might fight a little bit. But it won't be because, oh, that's this race or that's that race. It'll just be, you did something I didn't like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we have to look at it. You know, we got to start, it sounds cliche, but judging people by their character. And then we just got to make sure everybody's trying and striving every day to get their character up. So that, you know, we have a lot of good people and a few, you're always going to have bad people. That's never going to be gone until it's all said and done.
So you're telling me that there's some bad black people and there's some bad white people? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying there's a lot of bad black people, a lot of bad white people, but there's more good of each. There's more good of each of those. So anytime I run across like one of my friends who will say something that's, you know, semi-racist, like, oh, black people are blah, blah, blah. My first question is, one, how many black people do you know? And two, how many black people that you just described do you know? So do you know a black guy who's in a gang?
Good. That's
Probably
good.
not. Okay, so how can you place yourself in a position of lordship, what I call a position of lordship over someone, and you're just going to tell their story without knowing them? Somebody might be in a gang because that's the only way you could survive in his neighborhood without getting chased home and beat up every day. I got to join this group of guys who protect each other. And then, you know, drugs got put in the neighborhood and then it morphed into something else. And so unless you, like you said, relationship is key. And so I don't have a lot of patience. I work on my patience with people who just have these snap to judgment things like, oh, I know everything about that group based on what I've seen on TV. You know, I don't have any relationship with anyone. So we got to work on our relationships, and I think we could put a dent in it. But once again, I think people are always going to hate people, and there's always going to be people in power who hate people. And so all we can do is chip away at it, you know, work on our circles of influence and our children, and make sure that we're creating an environment where, you know, racism is not tolerated, you know. It doesn't have a place to live. So if you're racist, you know that you're on the outside. So that's kind of what I think, man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you know, at some point, maybe this is a later conversation, but at some point I think we need to talk about how do you effectively challenge people in your sphere of influence. And that's part one. And then part two is, can you challenge somebody cross-culturally? And if so, how do you do that?
So we may have to bring a guest in for that, man.
Ooh, that's a good idea. We can talk about some
Bring a
ideas.
guest in for that. Somebody who disagrees with us vehemently.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you guys are horribly wrong.
Yeah, so we'll maybe save that one for next time. But I agree, man. Relationship. And another thing I want to say real quickly is, you know, it doesn't count, in my opinion. It needs to be a genuine relationship. Right. Not somebody that, you know, you hang out with occasionally and you're only talking about sports or, you know, superficial stuff. Somebody you get to know. Right. You know when they're hurt or when they've got an issue in their life. You know a little bit about their family. I mean, I'm talking, we need to get to know people. Right.
That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I agree.
You good?
I'm good for today.
All right. Once again, I'm Romeo.
And I'm Mugsy.
And we thank you guys for joining in and watching. See you next time.
See ya.
I'm not you, you're not me, but we're in this thing together. No one's perfect, wait and see. Really, 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 really want to.